days. But this evening, it is still September 18th. And I talked last about meeting Mike Tanzer and what occurred with that, and also meeting the Hines individual. The other thing that I would mention is that when I went out with him to go out for dinner, the first time I went out with him, I didn't certain things did not happen. And then the next time that I went out with him, he picked me up in a black car that he said wasn't his own. And it was sort of like, I don't exactly know what kind of a car it was, maybe some sort of a sporty Honda Accord type. But I'm really bad with car styles, and I've seen examples of it before on the road and just never really cared to memorize or take a look. Maybe I should. But he said that it wasn't his car. And this is maybe the third time that I was being taken out by somebody who's telling me that the car they're driving is not their car. I believe the first person to do that was Josh Gatov, and he raped me of my virginity. The next person to say, "This isn't my car," was Mike Tanzer, who told me, when I asked what his background was, he told me that he was Scottish and Russian Jewish. And Josh Gatov was Russian Jewish. So when I met Raul Buhanda and Garza, when I met Raul the one time in a parking lot, he had a car that wasn't his own, but he didn't make a big deal about it, and he didn't tell me it wasn't his own car. And he was coming back from some kind of work with police, so it wasn't, at least in that situation, wasn't that noticeable. But Josh Gatov made a point of picking me up in a white foreign vehicle that wasn't his own. And then Mike Tanzer, on the night that I was date raped by him, he was picking me up in a black sports car that he said wasn't his own. And so that is maybe a little out of the ordinary. But then, of course, I was meeting, and then I had most of the migraines that I had, I began having the night after I was, also that drink that I had, the one that was so strong, I felt like I had slept the best that I had slept my entire life when I did sleep. I couldn't remember anything, and usually I don't sleep that hard, but I was just knocked cold in a way. And as I said, I thought I should maybe stay with him because things kept happening, and I recognized that something wrong had happened again. But I was feeling really used, and I thought maybe I would have to put up with it. It was the exact same thing that I thought with Josh Gatov. He raped me. Now I can never be with anybody. And I got over that, but then after it happened a couple more times, I started feeling that way again. I started feeling like this is very strange, and maybe, maybe this is the maximum number of persons that's acceptable, and I need to try to make something work out with him. So I sort of did it for just a little bit, and then I didn't. I decided no. And I think I started to question, once I had a little more time, I started to question the effects of the one drink. And then I was also started having, after that occurred with him, I was having then the migraines triggered against me by military. And I think it's sort of interesting that John Kerry is such a career military person, and that he was running for president, and his son-in-law had been inviting me to go to his friend to go to after parties that involved drugs. So I think that the combination of possibly date raping me and not having me around any drugs, but believing that they or knowing or having an idea that they did do that, was a liability possibly. So maybe that's why someone in the military decided to trigger migraines against me, and then maybe wanted to set me up in some way, definitely, to affect my lawsuits. And also, I was getting low on my pain prescription pills, and which I had to have for managing the migraines that I had, which were excruciating. And so I really think that it's possible that the United States government, or someone in the government, was hoping to get rid of me. I mean, obviously more than once, in a variety of ways, but I think that they were possibly trying to insult my family or my dad or somebody who cared about me, and that they were also trying to harm me, and they knew that I was an MK Ultra person. They knew what things had been done to me. They knew how to access stuff, and basically knew how to shut me down if they wanted to. So the last time that I really talked to him before he called me in Washington after I reported things to FBI was as he was driving to California, and he called me and wanted to talk. And then after that, I gave this report to the FBI, and I mentioned his name. I didn't say very much, but I did tell them that I thought I had a drink that was a little off. And I also mentioned Robin's name, and I don't think that was included anywhere in the report. And anyway, he called me at my grandparents' house at that point, and at that point, I think I was already stuck maybe in Washington. I think that the event had occurred where my driver's license was illegally suspended by Judge Gerald Warren. So I think that that's what happened there. I think what I want to talk about now, or what I should talk about, is then what happened with my lawsuits. And I mean, actually I've already sort of touched on that. I mean, I was getting harassed, my mail was being obstructed, my car batteries were getting sapped out of energy, I was still being vandalized. I had somebody, at one point I did have somebody come over, I paid someone to help me organize my files. And I believe her name was Bonnie, or she looked exactly like a woman who I think used to work for Dan Gaddy named Bonnie. But she had blonde hair, and she was sort of short, and she was sort of bobbed blonde hair, and she was kind of petite. And she answered my ad because I placed an ad in the PSU college newspaper, and I told Krista about it. And I was going to pay someone to help me organize my legal files at that time, because they were really, I had a ton of stuff, and I had done all of these, gone into the computer system and got into the software. I made labels for all of my files and folders, and I was systematically organizing boxes and boxes of files into my file cabinet. by alphabetical order, by year. I was really actually very organized when I wanted to be, and when I was not being tortured, I was very organized. So that's what I was doing, and I was putting it together, and I thought, this is going to take such a long time. If I have someone helping me, it'll be a lot faster, and I can get other things done. So I offered to pay it. It was in 2003 or 2004. I offered to pay someone $15 an hour to help me with that, which was, I thought, I wanted to pay whoever helped me a decent amount of money and make it worth their while, and feel good about what I was able to offer them at that time, too. And so that was a very high amount to have. I mean, somebody would have done it for me for a lot less, probably, but I liked being able to give when I could give and when I could be fair, and that was carryover from giving most of my money away to volunteer work. So I was not a stingy person at all. And so she came over to help me, and then I paid another person to detail my car because I needed a car detail. And I thought, well, while I'm doing this with her, maybe he could detail my car, because it was just a mess and it needed to be cleaned out all the way. So he did that, and she was in my house. She acted fine. It was a couple of days for this project. And sometimes she was looking at me like she just really didn't like me, and she was looking at all the files and records. Probably she worked for the FBI, which would be really fascinating, because when she left, I mean, I thought at the time when she left, I did think that she worked for one of the law firms. It was an adversary with one of the law firms that I was up against. And when she left, I actually left her alone and went with the guy to do some of the car detail for a minute, and I just stupidly trusted her in my house. I'd been with her for a couple days. She seemed professional. She said she'd done some work in the past for, I think, law firms and different individuals. And she just looked nice, and she acted okay, so I thought that I would be able to trust her if I left her alone for an hour. And when I got back, she said, everything's done, and I looked, and when I initially looked, it did look like almost everything was done. And then I found out she had gone through, stolen a bunch of evidence, and put all of my files out of order. And she did it discreetly. They all looked like they were in order, but she moved all these papers around and put them in totally different places. So I had just paid her $15 an hour for many hours of work, 3 days or more in a row. And she sabotaged it in the end and stole a bunch of my records, including police tickets that I had saved and kept. And she also stole any kinds of contacts that I had of victims of clergy abuse. So she stole all those names and phone numbers that I had of people that had given me information or talked to me and wanted some help in some way. So other things were stolen as well, but I remember specifically that police tickets and clergy abuse victims' names and numbers were gone. So she put everything out of order, and I didn't even know that she had done that yet. And I was sitting there, and I was paying her. And I said, do you think that this is enough? I said, I could give you a little bit more. And I said, and she stared at me like stunned. Here I was, she knew what she had done, and I was asking her, I was being so nice, and asking her if she thought that was enough, and maybe, did she think that was fair? That's what I asked her. I said, do you think that this is a fair amount? That this is fair? And she probably freaked out because she knew that nothing was fair about it, because she had just swindled me. So if I saw a photo of this person, I could pretty much point her out. I don't remember her exact first and last name, but I do remember enough of what she looked like to be able to point out at least someone that looked similar to her.